I was recently watching a video from a YouTuber that I follow, and the title of this video, which really did strike a nerve, because we look at the shift that's going on in society today, uh, and it's grievous for those who are, let's say, 35 and over. And the title of this video was called "The World You Were Born In No Longer Exists." It was directed towards the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, and the millennials. We remember a time where, and I think this is the problem that we're having, or the challenge that we're having today, is because everything was in, you can tell the difference in quality of videos from then to now, but at least it was very clear. You can hear what people were saying. You have full color. So it's much like it is right now, even though everything is in HD, you can see things a little bit more crystal clear, but you can relate because that was the technology of our time. And it's even as the event of MySpace and Black Planet, where the internet just began to flourish and people began to venture out and uh, socialize via the internet. That was the inceptions through, the late 90s and the early 2000s, where you had 1444 or 1400 gigabyte and 2800 gigabyte. You had the modem, and you can still connect to the internet. I had multi-monitor support in my apartment at the time, so we were at the inception of what we're seeing today. And it goes back to the statement that this man made, is that we were born in a generation that no longer exists, because we see, or we have seen, the transformation, the literal moral and value transformation of society take place over the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years. And boy, does time go by just like that. But, I was speaking to someone recently, and it triggered this. It was a very triggering video, and it was a triggering conversation, is because, I'm 48 years old, right? And I can remember the Octagon, I can remember the Sound Factory, I can remember the Pentagon. These are all clubs in New York City. Uh, and the height of rap music, I can remember all that just like it was yesterday. And even then, we had a moral code, we had a system of ethics, uh, that I can even see when I look back were on the decline. And back then, we had some sense of standards, expectation. And when you look at today, uh, everything is out the window. Uh, I was recently watching two separate things. Now, there's a trend of morbidly obese. Now, I'm not talking about thick, I'm talking about morbidly obese women doing videos for attention on Facebook and on TikTok and on YouTube and on Instagram. And before then, you wouldn't have a woman that would dare get up, that was morbid. Now, I'm gonna describe morbidly obese. I'm talking about fat hanging out. I'm talking about the whole thing. And no shame. No shame whatsoever. Uh we see the killings and the debauchery and the homicides and the fashion just totally become foreign to our eyes, because we grew up in a different time. The time that we were born in no longer exists. And that is a very grievous thing to experience, and see. And I can only imagine what the baby boomers, uh, are going through because they've seen not one, but three generations. Whether it the Generation X's, the millennials, or yeah, they've seen two transformations in society today. And I'll tell you, I can only imagine what they're going through in the spirit. Uh, it's pretty sad. It's pretty grievous to see. Uh, I was watching a video of my time during the '90s, late '90s, early 2000s, while I was in high school and college, and how we used to have video camcorders and how we used to go outside and be, and how the interactions was between male and men and women, uh, or young men and women at that point in time. And it's totally different. Everything is totally been transformed. And not only has it been transformed, but it's become the norm. Not only has it become the norm, but there's no shame today. Before, there was shame. There was a certain moral center that people held in their spirit that prevented them from going out and doing certain things. And now you see the way people dress, whether it man or woman. If you see all the makeup, and you see whether it man or woman, you see the identity crisis when when all it comes to the LGBTQ XYZ community. You see it all, and it wasn't going on back then, but it's commonplace now. And I'll lead you with this. I remember being in Hunter College, 68 in Lex, and being in there to study different papers that I had. And among the papers, we were talking about, or in I forgot which class it was, whether it was history or science or whatever. We had to do a paper about nuclear warfare. And I'll tell you, man, I started to read this stuff, and I forgot the name of the author, but it was I know the name of the the book. It was called First Strike. I think it was called First Strike. And in the monologue, or in the beginning, the prefix, or somewhere in the book, it talks about the mark of the beast. It talks about how people will accept the mark of the beast. And I said to myself, how is it that people today would accept things? And I used to spend hours, 68th and Lex, Hunter College, massive book, or a massive library. Because back then it wasn't, you go to a computer, you can go to a computer and search stuff. And if people remember going into a computer, you had to use keywords and things of that nature. It wasn't Google or Netscape, or none of that stuff existed back then. But you did have computers, and that's how you searched those computers in the library, or by numbers. It was very rudimentary. However, you could use a computer. But I said to myself, well, all these people, and then I cross-referenced it with the Bible because that's what it was quoting. I said to myself, with all of this information out there, how is it that people would possibly, uh, how did it that people could possibly fall for such a system when it was prophesied and written back then? And fast forward to today, I clearly see how people are going to fall for the mark of the beast. I was recently watching a video of a man going out into malls, and I think he was inside of supermarkets, and he offered people $20 if they can uh, quote one single scripture. Now, or letter. Now we know today everybody can quote John 3:16, but it's gotten that bad. It has gotten that bad that people can't even quote that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing that all of the scriptures or all of the letters they can always quote John 3:16, but now he offered $20 to random people in a supermarket and they could not even quote John 3:16. This is exactly how we now know in a revelation that hit me many years later how people are going to openly receive the mark of the beast. Uh, it's pretty tough out there, but for you Gen Xers, millennials, baby boomers, like he said, the world that you were born in no longer exists.